I was at a horrible murder scene. It was a whole family killed. The mother, father, two kids. One of those drug things where they were looking, who's got the drugs. They had the wrong family, essentially. But they killed everyone. And one of the crime scene detectives said to me, hey, Barbara, why don't you go in and do that kid in the bedroom? I'll do the mother out here. I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And when I walked into the room and saw a little boy laying on his stomach with his soft brown curls and his little golden skin, and his backpack was like Star Wars or something that kids love. He was obviously on his way to school when he was shot, and he had a gunshot wound in his head. And my heart seized up. I froze. I couldn't put the detachment up quickly enough, the curtain. I didn't know what to do. So I went out in the other room and I said, there was an officer standing around, and I said, can you do me a favor there, officer? Come in here and witness my exam, just in case. And he said, just in case what? I said, just witness the findings. And so he did, and he stood there, and then I was able to be Barbara Butcher, investigator, put back my mask and do it. But it was still awful. And then, of course, later I just cried and cried about it. But that's what you do. That's what you do. It's a very tough job. I love my job. Absolutely loved it. But it destroyed a large portion of my heart. It had nothing to do with the book, oddly enough. The book was out, was doing fine. And then Dick Wolf had put together this show he wanted to do, 5 major cases in each city. And he was talking to New York City homicide detectives about their biggest cases. And a couple of them said, oh, you should call Barbara Butcher. She worked this one with me. So they called me and asked me to be in the show. And it was wonderful, mainly because I got to see the guys again. And that's a family that never goes away. They're in your heart. I don't see them anymore, but they're still there. And working with NYPD was a privilege. It's, terrific people. So just seeing the old gang again made me feel good. And there was another thing. One of the victims of the Carnegie Deli massacre, there's 5 people shot. This guy Anthony survived. I don't know how, because it was a bullet to his head, but it curved around the right way and he lived. He was there in the studio with me when we were shooting. And I went over and introduced myself. I told him I had, seen him in that moment and his blood. And we started talking about his life and the way he lives now, having almost died. And then we both started crying and hugging each other. And I just felt such a wonderful moment of, I got to do something good. I had a job where I could do some good in the world. And that meant a lot to me to see him. I'm so glad he lived. So, it is a thankless job in the sense of meeting with the family or the victims, of course. They're all gone. But no one wants to see me. I used to laugh. I'd walk through the projects and there'd be some old men sitting out on the benches every day, and they'd say, oh, there goes the death lady. I say, honey, you don't ever want to wake up in the morning and see me hovering over you, because that's a bad sign. But there was one case I went to, a mother and her son who had spent the weekend together. Very close. They visited often. They went shopping, went to good restaurants. And on this particular night, they were talking till 1 a.m, and the son said, I got to go to the bathroom. He walked out, and after 10 minutes, he hadn't come back. So his mother walked out into the living room and found that he had jumped out the window 25 stories and left a note, a horrible note, saying, don't tell anybody about this. I mean, it made no sense. The case was crazy. This poor woman was in the kind of shock that is life-altering. So I show up and I start to ask her questions, and she turned around to the wall and started banging her head against the wall really, really hard. I grabbed her shoulders. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "You're just a bad dream. I'm trying to wake up. You're a bad dream, that's all." And that chilled me to the core. It was true. I was her worst nightmare, there to tell her that her son was, suicide. I mean, it was awful. It was really awful. One of the reasons I wrote my book is I wanted people to understand what medical legal death investigators do. I mean, I bet you never even heard of that job before. They think, oh, there's forensic pathologists, they do autopsies, they go out to crime scenes. No, they don't. You can't leave an autopsy in the middle of it, leave the body on the table, run out to a crime scene. You need a medical legal death investigator, experienced, to go do the scene for you, do the exam, make a report, do the photos and the measurements, bring back that report to the medical examiner, who can now do an informed autopsy and determine the manner and the cause of death. So I wanted people to know what we do, and most of all, I wanted people to understand what we go through and what cops go through, and EMTs and emergency room nurses, all the people that work on the front lines and on the edge of life, on the margins. What we see is extraordinary, and what we do is extraordinary, and it stays in our hearts. A lot of times it ruins us. So I want people to know that and care about it. And most of all, I want those investigators and cops to take care of themselves. Don't do like I did back in the old days. We say, "Oh, we're strong. We don't need any therapy." Ha! We needed a lot of therapy. Nowadays, things are changing, but they need to change more.